Hello, welcome back to Online Sunday School. We're going to do another story today. I don't know if you're going to know this one as well as the last one. It's about a set of twins called Jacob and Esau. Now, their dad and their grandpa, you might remember, their grandpa was Abraham and their dad was Isaac. And I'm sure that you have heard Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. Okay, so that song is about a promise that God made with Abraham. And he said he was going to have so many descendants, so many grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren that they would make nations, they would make countries from them, that they would just fill up the countries. He also said that there would be kings from them. And they were just going to be so blessed. And he made this promise with Abraham and said, this promise is going to go through your descendants. It's going to go through Isaac and then his kid and whatever. And so it's going to continue on. So that was God's promise to Abraham. So Abraham had Isaac, and Isaac got married, and his wife had two boys, and they were named Jacob and Esau. Now, Esau was born first. Some of you might be twins or maybe no twins, and even though they're born on the same day, one is a little bit older, maybe just by seconds, maybe by minutes, but one is older than the other, and Esau was the older one. Now, I want to tell you about something called a birthright. And we don't really do it so much these days. Maybe a little bit, maybe some people. But back then, the custom was whoever was oldest got what was called the birthright. So when the dad would pass away, when he would die, the oldest son had the birthright, which meant that he would take the dad's place. He would be responsible for the family. He got the land or the business or the cows or whatever it was that the father had. The oldest would get it. He got the responsibility, but he also got the money and all the stuff. So that was what a birthright is. And that might not seem very fair if you're not the oldest one. But that's the way it was done. So what happened was they got older. Now Esau and Jacob were not very much the same. They might have been twins, but they did not look the same and they didn't act the same. Esau was very hairy. Do you know how some men have lots and lots of hair on their face and on their arms, on their chest? They have lots of hair. And some men don't have so much hair. So Jacob didn't have very much hair at all, and Esau was a hairy guy. So they looked very different. And Esau liked to go outside. He liked to be hunting. He liked to do things like that. He was a tough nut. And Jacob liked more to hang around the house. He was more that kind of guy. I think if there had been video games at that time, Jacob would have been the one playing video games. And Esau would be out playing football. So that's their difference in their personality as well. So you need to remember about this birthright because that's important. Now I'm going to read to you from Genesis. And remember, Genesis is the first book of the Bible, so it's right at the start. And I'm reading to you from Genesis 25. So the mom of these babies was talking to God, and God said to her, there are two nations in your tummy, two people that will be separated, and one of them will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. So we'll remember that too. So when they were older, let me see. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man, staying among the tents. Isaac, that's their dad, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau. So he had a favorite, and that was Esau. But Rebekah, the mom, also had a favorite, and that was Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in, and he was famished. He was so hungry. And he said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that stew because I'm so hungry." So he was hungry and he just came in and oh my goodness. You know how sometimes you've been outside playing or working and you come in and you smell mommy's making supper and you just want some so bad and you don't even want to wait. It was kind of like that. And Jacob said, "First, before I give you any of this food, sell me your birthright." So what he wanted him to do, he said, "I will give you some food, but you need to give me the birthright so that when our dad dies, then I get to be in charge and I get all the stuff and I get the money and I get all the animals and everything else." And Esau said, "Look, I'm about to die. So what good is the birthright to me?" Do you think he was actually about to die? Sometimes we say, "Oh, I'm going to die," and we aren't going to die. We just say that. And he said, "I don't care about the birthright. Just give me the stew." And Jacob said, "Promise me first." And so Esau promised him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. And Esau ate and drank and got up and left. And so Esau didn't take care of his birthright. So that's the first part of our story today. I want to ask you, do you think that was a good deal? Do you think he should have made that deal? I don't think so. For just one bowl of stew, and he's going to be hungry in a couple of hours anyway. And he gave away what should have been his. He gave away all that stuff because he wanted something right now. I don't think that was a good deal. But he made the deal. Do you think he had to stick by it? I think so. I want to tell you a story about my kids when they were younger and a deal that they made. So I have two kids. One is called Brian. I have 4 kids, but the ones I'm telling you about is 2 kids, Brian and Amanda. And Amanda is older. And they were on the school bus one day, and Amanda was eating potato chips. And Brian said, "Amanda, I want a potato chip." And Amanda said, "Nope, these are mine. I bought them with my own money, and they are mine, and you're not having any." And Brian was just like Esau. "I'm so hungry. I'm going to die. I will do anything for one chip, just one chip." And Amanda said, "Well, what's your deal?" And he said, "I will do your chores for a whole week if you give me one chip." And Amanda said, "Sure, that's a great deal," because we had lots of animals that needed to be fed and watered and cleaned up after, and there was lots of chores on the farm. And she said, "For one chip, you want to do my chores for a whole week?" And he said yes. So she gave him the chip. So when they got home, they came running in the house, and Amanda said, "You have to do my chores now." And Brian didn't want to because that one chip was just gone in a flash, and he knew that that was a bad deal. And he said, "Mom, I made this deal with Amanda, but it was not a good deal." And he told me about it. He said, "Was that a bad deal?" I said, "That was a very bad deal." He said, "So then I don't have to do it, right?" But I said, "Yes, you do. You made the deal. You promised. Even though it was a bad deal, you promised. And so you have to stick with it." And so he had to do all of his chores and her chores for a whole week for one chip. Not a good deal. But he learned a good lesson that way. Your word is your word. When you promise something, you promise it. When you say that you will do something, you don't go back on that. So we need to be careful with what we say. Now, I'm kind of disappointed in both brothers. Esau made a very bad deal. He just didn't even care enough to even think about it, and he was just silly and made a bad deal. But I'm kind of disappointed in Jacob too, because he should have never asked for that deal. To know that you're ripping off your brother is not a nice thing, is it? So, I mean, that was a big thing. It wasn't just a potato chip. It was his whole birthright. So that was a big deal. But your word is your word, whether it's a birthright or a potato chip. When you promise, you promise. In the Bible, it says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And that means mean what you say. So we have to be careful with what we say. We need to be thinking about it. And not just say something quick. And not just about promises, but also sometimes we just answer things really fast. We say something that we think is going to be funny, and it wasn't really funny. It was kind of mean. We need to be careful with what we say, with what our words are. So we need to be honest and have good intentions. Jacob did not have good intentions, did he? Now I want you to talk a little bit about the next part. So years later, Isaac was getting very old. Now that was the dad, remember? And he was almost completely blind. He couldn't see anything. And he called for Esau, the older son, and said to him, my son. And Esau said, here I am. And he said, I'm an old man, and I don't know when I'm going to die. So I want you to get your weapons, and I want you to go into the country and hunt some wild game for me, and prepare for me the tasty food that I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I can give you my blessing before I die. Now his blessing was, remember we talked about it earlier, that God made a promise to Isaac and said, through your kids and their kids, there's going to be a blessing. That you're going to have lots and lots of kids, and some of them are going to be kings, and they are going to have lots of wealth, and they're just going to be blessed. Now this is going to be passed down through one of their sons. So it went from Abraham to Isaac, and now Isaac is going to pass that blessing on to somebody else. It's a little bit different than the birthright. The birthright was stuff and responsibility, but this blessing was what God had promised. So now the mom was listening, and so she called Jacob, and she said, hurry, hurry, while Esau's gone, go in there and pretend that you are Esau, and so that you get the blessing. And Jacob said, well, I don't look like him. I don't smell like him. And she said, oh, I'm going to make the food because that's what your dad wanted. And so, and they took some hair from a goat and they put it on Jacob's hand so that he felt hairy. So they did that. And she said, just do as I tell you. So he went and got the goats and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his dad liked it. And then she took the best clothes of Esau, which she had in the house, and put them on Jacob. And then she puts the hair on his hands. And then she handed her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she made. And he went into his father and he said, my father. And he said, yes, my son, who is it? Because he couldn't see. And Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing. And Isaac said, how did you find it so quickly, my son? It just didn't seem right to Isaac. But Jacob lied again and said, "The Lord your God gave me success." And then Isaac said, "Come near to me so I can touch you, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So he already knew something just is not right. And so Jacob went close, and his father touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He didn't recognize him because it felt hairy like Esau. And so he blessed him. But he said, "Are you really my son Esau?" And Jacob lied again and said, "I am." "So, my son, bring me some of your food to eat so that I can give you my blessing." So Jacob brought it to him, and he ate, and the father drank some wine. And then his father said to him, "Come here, my son, and give me a kiss." And so he went to him and kissed him, and Isaac could smell his clothes, and he smelled like Esau. And so he gave him the blessing. He said, "Nations will serve you, and people bow down to you, and you will be lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you." And he gave him all of the promise that God had passed down. And after Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, Esau came in from hunting. And he prepared some food and brought it in, and said, "My father, sit up and eat some of my game so that you can give me your blessing." And his father Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm your son, your firstborn Esau." And Isaac was so upset. And he said that he had given it already to Jacob. He said, "Your brother came deceitfully," means dishonestly, "and took your blessing." And Esau said, "He deceived me 2 times. He took my birthright, and now he took my blessing." And Isaac couldn't do anything about it because he was a man of God, and his word was his word. And he already gave it to Jacob, even though Jacob lied and tricked him. That is so sad. But remember what I told you at the very beginning. God already knew that. And he told that to Rebecca, the mom. Remember, before they were born, he said that there are 2 babies in your tummy. And one will be stronger than the other, which was true. Esau was way stronger than Jacob. But the older will serve the younger, which is true, because of that birthright and that blessing. So God already knew that. I don't know if it had to be that way to make it happen, because I don't think that God was very happy with all the lying and trickery that happened. If God wants something for you, then he wants something for you. And you don't have to lie to get it. So what I want to talk to you about is that we are so disappointed when we're let down. When somebody tricks us or breaks a promise. Doesn't that just make you sad? When somebody tells you this is going to happen, and then they say, "Oh yeah, it's not going to happen after all." It's just sad. Even if they don't do it sneaky like Jacob and his mom did, sometimes promises are just broken. And it just hurts us in our heart, right? So we need to be people that try not to break your promise. And the way that we do that is we be careful what we promise. Instead of saying, "I promise I will do that," we can say, "I will try to do that," or "I will see if I can do that, but I can't promise." Because sometimes things are just out of our control, right? And we need to think before we speak. And not jump in like Esau and just, "This sounds like a good plan right now," and so we just do it. We need to think about it. What does this mean for later? And make good decisions. Now, COVID, I want to tell you, feels to me like a whole bunch of broken promises. Does it feel like that to you? We say the restaurants are going to open up, and maybe they do for a little bit and then they close. And the school, we're going to be back in school and then we're back at home. Or soccer is on or baseball is on and then it's not. Or the pool is going to open or camp is going to be on and then they're not. And that is so hard. It just feels like we get our hopes up and then they're gone. And our hopes are up and then they're gone. And we think we're going to see our friends because it's going to be over soon. Everybody said, this is not going to take very long. A couple of months and it'll be over. Well, it's been over a year and it's still not over. We think we're going to see our friends or our grandma or whatever, and then it doesn't happen. But we have to be safe. So we have to, COVID just feels like a whole bunch of broken promises because we can't control what's going to happen next, and we need to be safe, and it's not us that's making those promises. So I thought we could use a reminder of what a solid promise feels like. A solid promise. God promises us solid promises. When God makes a promise, he never breaks it. And we talked before about some of his promises. He promised to send the Holy Spirit so that we would never be alone, that he would always be with us. And he did that. He promised to send a Savior to die for us so we can make a way back to God and heaven. And he did that. That's what Jesus did. He promised with the rainbow, remember with Noah's Ark? Maybe we'll tell that story another time. But the promise of a rainbow says the whole earth is never going to be flooded again. There might be little floods, but the whole earth is not going to be wiped out in a flood ever again. God never, ever breaks his promises. He says that he will always watch out for us, and he does. So I want us to do a solid promise, and it feels like it will remind us of what a solid promise is. Something that we don't go back on, and it gives us hope, just like we have the hope of heaven and we have the hope of what God's going to do in our lives. So this, instead of a craft, I have a project for you. As a family, I want your whole family to be in on it, your mom and your dad and your siblings. As a family, think about and plan something that you could do together. And set a date. Make it, this is going to be the day, and we're going to do this. And make it something that doesn't depend on COVID rules. So don't say you're going to go to a restaurant, because the restaurant might be closed. It's got to be something that doesn't depend on COVID rules or the weather. Although the weather can be worked around. When my kids were young, my husband and I made a promise that we would take our kids tenting. We went camping in a tent all the time. And the kids wanted to go camping. And it was August. And we said, absolutely, this weekend we will go camping. We promise. Well, that weekend, it snowed. It was August and it snowed. And it was cold. And we didn't want to go tenting. But the kids said, you promised that we would be tenting this weekend. You promised. And we said, but it snowed. And they said, we don't care. Your word is your word. And you promised. So we cleared out all the furniture in our living room. And we put the tent up in the middle of the living room. And we went tenting for the weekend inside the house. And we had lots of fun. And we didn't answer the phone because there is no phone if you go tenting and camping. And so you can still find ways around it if you really want to do something bad enough. So that's what I want you to do, is plan something. Decide on what it is. And it doesn't have to be a camping trip. Maybe it could be an indoor picnic just with the family, or some special kind of food that you really love. Maybe it could be a movie night where you can watch just movie after movie and stay up and eat popcorn until you fall asleep on the couch. Um, Maybe a games night. You know your family. You'll probably think of stuff that I would never think of. But you know your family. You know what you like to do. So I want you to plan it and make a promise, something to look forward to. Maybe you can do that once a month, is plan something and not set the date exactly until that month comes up, but decide on different things that you would like to do. Planning it is as much fun as the activity, the excitement of looking forward to it. You know how you get so excited looking forward to Christmas? It's not just Christmas Day that's wonderful. It's the planning Christmas and wrapping stuff and buying presents and doing the Sunday school Christmas concert, and all the excitement leading up to Christmas is exciting and fun. And so that's what I want this to be, is all the planning of it and the getting ready for it be as much fun as the activity. And then text me if you want. You can show me a picture or just tell me what you did. And you can text me 4851521. I would love to hear about it or see it. That would be fantastic. So have a wonderful week. Remember, God always keeps his promises, and we have so much to look forward to. See you next week.